That's how you're starting, dude.
I'm going to open with that. I'm going to totally call bullshit because it's so easy to look in reflection. But wait, did you get rid of your screen? I was going to bring up your screen. Add your screen.
Oh, I got rid of it. Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted to stay up?
Because the public deserves to see this shit.
I mean, Grant, you could just fire up Coin Market Cap and go to Ethereum, and then Jay will give us all of his analytics.
Oh yeah. Go for it. You run it.
Me run it?
Yeah,
just go to fire up Coin
Because
Market.
I feel like my internet is eventually gonna fall out if I'm sharing two things at the same time.
Okay, so let's see here.
For everyone watching, Jay is on the International Space Station. As you can see with the sun behind him, he's very close to vaporizing. So his internet is,
Hold on. So Jay has afternoon that where the hell is this? Jay has reported this afternoon that he predicted
it.
He predicted. Hold on, 6 months.
Show me like a 6 month or 3 month or something.
Here you go. This is it right here.
Yeah,
so
you have to drag through.
Predicted. Jay, for those just checking in, we're gonna fight. So Jay starts the show with this prediction of FTX tanking on its ass was completely predictable, and Jarrett said, yeah, that's true, and I said bullshit, and Jay said it's a normal wedge. So Jay, tell me your wedge theory based on my screen that we're showing.
All right, so you're pointing at the
September
date
10th.
of the Ethereum merge. Yeah. So 4 days after the Ethereum merge, it gets to a high point, not an all-time high or anything like that. It peaks and then it falls. And then it flatlines, and for like a couple of days, it goes back up, and it seems like it's going back up to that previous peak. Generally, when you see a flat line and then a quick increase, all that is a wedge. It's just a bunch of people looking at the price and saying like, "Oh, it's stable, it's stable, it's stable. Let me go buy some," and they buy it, and everybody else who was waiting to sell sells.
So this is my question: what does this chart say then?
What are we looking at? Ethereum,
this is the all view. So is this a flag? Is this a wedge? Is this a descending reversal? Like, this is what I don't get about technical traders. What scale do we choose to look at?
What's up, Victor?
What's up, Victor?
Yeah, hey, Victor.
I mean, it depends on how often you trade. Like, if you're trading every day, then you need to look at like an hourly chart, or maybe even less.
Okay, so like if I'm a maxi, let's say I'm an Ethereum maxi. If I'm an Ethereum maxi, I might look at this chart and say, maybe this is a descending flag of some kind. And then I could look at that trend, but it would take me 6 years to realize the fruits of making that call.
Yeah.
Right? And so then you're saying, no, Grant, like if you look at this on this scale, we've got nothing but like dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
and then
you got like a couple moments where it looks like, oh, we might pick up, and then it flatlines, and you know what's going to happen when it flatlines. People are going to think like, oh, it's stable again, it's time to buy it, and everyone else who's been waiting to sell says, yes, we got some suckers on the line, let's sell it to them.
Interesting. So
I like that, Jay.
Got some suckers on the line. So the question is, do you do technical trading, or do you only invest in yourself?
I invest in myself, but I understand how the technical trading works. Like one of the things I made sure to do when I did my MBA is learn how to do that.
I forget that you both have MBAs. Listen, you guys.
I don't have an MBA. You take out the B and just an MA. I have a Master's of Arts of International Affairs.
Not an MBA. No.
Man, okay, so you guys are smart cookies. Okay. Well,
but wait a second. Wait a second. Allison, hi, evening. Wait a second here. Jay, I think Grant brings up a really great point. You're like the dude who hangs around the gym who's not doing pull-ups, who tells everyone else how to do the pull-ups. You look at it, he's like, yeah, that's me.
People who don't know how to do it teach. You can't drive, you teach, right?
But how do you know? How do you know what you're teaching has value? Allison, since you're piped in at the moment, Victor. Oh my God. I know Victor's not a trader.
Victor's on the floor.
A gambler.
Victor's on the floor right now because he's trying to listen to Jay's self-development trading tips, even though he doesn't do either.
So anyone watching, I have one of those, and I'm not.
Ooh, boom.
And then Tristan, I need to know what you're talking about merch, because meanwhile, Jay's making money on calling wedges, but investing in himself. Victor's making money on Shido Inu. I don't know about the rest of you, so maybe I need to know what merch line we need to roll out, because
I do trade with a wink.
I do trade. He does trade.
He's trading right now. He's just like listening to us subliminally. I'm actually dropping merch very soon, so I've been keeping that on the low. But that's coming to a theater near everyone, so get prepared.
Tristan, I want to know what merch you're talking about. Like shirts? Actually, this would make killer crypto trading merch. If you did like a pixelated version of some of these trading terms like wedge, flag, and just but made them like designer brand shirts. That would be, we'd wear that. I'd wear that. All right, so we're here to talk about the trash pile that is FTX, Binance.
I don't even want to talk about this. I like FTX as a company. I thought they were cool.
Hold on, Tristan just says the name of the T-shirt for every Forex guy is: do you do technical investing or just invest in yourself?
Absolutely.
Ooh,
that's a good shirt.
If you're listening to us on audio only, you need to go onto YouTube, go to Not Crypto Bros, and fire up where we are. We're 6 minutes and 40 seconds in. Oh God. Victor is very smart. He trades. There you go.
Okay, so then let's ask Victor, because Victor's the actual probably real trader in the room, right? Because I know that all Jarrett does is buy Bitcoin and put it under his mattress.
Yep.
And I know that's pretty much what he does. And all y'all know by now that I just dollar cost average and think I'm smarter than everyone else, but I really am not. So I want to know, I want to learn tons, lots tonight. So I want to know from Victor. Victor, did you call or could you have predicted the wedge that Jay is bringing up?
Or the 36-hour wedge where Jay becomes Nostradamus and he gets 1,000 Twitter followers every minute.
Because I believe that you can't predict that FTX was going to fold its liquidity.
I never said I predicted FTX. I predicted the wedge.
Now, so this raises a great question. And this is a legit question. Let me get to legit questions for those watching who deserve real content.
Oh, this is real content.
This is real
not valuable content.
Do those watching and do you gentlemen believe that this transaction with FTX, which should have been at first, I think the first headlines were framed positively. Binance was going to buy FTX, and this was supposed to look like some stabilizing move that looked really positive. People read between the lines quickly and saw, oh shit, this means FTX is destabilized and has no liquidity. And we can get into why they're in this position now. We can talk about Three Arrows in a second. Do you gentlemen believe that this is leading the tanking going on in Ethereum and therefore Bitcoin and therefore everything else? And to those watching, is this cause and effect right now that we're watching, or is it just correlation by fear?
So I will go back to this and I will say it until I'm blue in the face. The best calendar we have in crypto, if we're assuming that crypto is detached somehow from the Fed, the interest rates, everything else is happening in the macro environment, is the Bitcoin halving. And that happens this spring. Excuse me. That happens in the spring.
Tristan, fire up your t-shirt line because Jarrett's got one.
Yeah, if you're looking for a Not Crypto Bro slogan, I'm about to drop some heat. So that happens in 2024, the halving. So if we count a year back, we get to this spring of 2023 in about 4 to 5 months. That's when I think we're going to see the bottom. And I posted the other day that we're going to see $8,000 to $12,000 Bitcoin somewhere between January to May of 2023. And I caught some pretty good heat for that. So let the floodgates open. Feel free, you two gentlemen, to weigh in on that. But I think instead of focusing on Jay's wedge or whatever's happening with FTX, I think that this is just where the market is going to go as far as everything else happening. And I think everything else is honestly just noise. And when you zoom out, if you zoom out and you look at the actual trend, Bitcoin has been going down since it hit 68, 69 in November of 2021. It has just been going down. And yeah, it will go up and it will go down if you like are zooming into the week or the hour, as you said, Grant. Obviously, in statistics, we know if we choose where we want to start and when we want to stop gathering data, then we can kind of create our own narrative and everything will play. But for me, we've just been on this healthy trend. Thank you very much, Victor. Victor, I love when Victor agrees with me. It just feels like better. So we've been on this healthy trend. Yeah, it is. We've been on this healthy trend going down, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. And actually, if I can bring up the points I want to make, and then maybe we can, I'd love to throw the mic back to you guys and anyone else. So and then we'll get to Allison's comment because I want to dive into that. But I said that, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I said that it will hit 8 to 12 between February and May of 2023 because, and now I'm getting away from just the Bitcoin halving, but bringing the other things. This is a year out from the halving. So that's the first point. The U.S. government will finally admit recession because they have been saying it's not a recession, even though we had the definition of recession with 2 quarters back to back. Then it will, interest rates are at a 2-decade high, right? Yeah. So the cost of capital is going to is exponentially more, so it's going to slow down. Layoffs are going to push new investors to sell. I still believe that there's a lot of investors that are still holding on, but as layoffs come and people need the money, and tech is just absolutely wiping people up. Meta is going to have a huge layoff soon. Lyft just laid off a bunch of people. This is only going to continue.
Yeah.
And I think corporations or anyone big, corporations or whales, are going to start to sell their BTC losses prior to tax season because they're going to tax harvest.
Absolutely.
So they're going to sell. And this is why my end point is May, because I think in April, we're going to see very, very, very low Bitcoin numbers of this next year. And it also has to do with a year out from the halving. A lot of things are starting to play in. And I also think today's election day, that also plays a role, at least in the United States, as we start to think about how the House and how the Senate and how everything is going to kind of balance out.
That's interesting that this happened on election day.
Because that will
a full moon eclipse, the last lunar eclipse for 3 years. Blood.
There you go. So there's a lot of things in play, including the moon.
Somehow.
So I'm going to pass the mic back to one of you. Hopefully one of you can pick up on Allison.
The moon thing is real, though. The moon thing is real. That when I was taking those TA classes, technical analysis classes,
yes,
the whole thing about sort of like trading being dependent on cycles of the moon and cycles of nature and stuff like that actually happens. Like one of them I think is correlated with what you were saying just now, Jarrett. So what I think is happening right now is a lot of people are trying to spend a bunch of money before the year ends, and instead of buying coins, what they've actually done is invest in companies. So there's a ton of cash that's being spent. And that cash is just going to like sit in those companies for about 6 months. So the company is going to do their best to grow and make themselves look better and so forth. But what's going to happen is come around May, when things start getting warm again, that's when trading is going to increase. And that's when you're going to see prices start going up. And I think eventually that ends up correlating with what Jarrett is saying about the Bitcoin happening.
And the headlines will catch that. And the headlines will not talk about the fact that they're moving money into businesses and trying to do a holding pattern. The headlines will say, X, Y, and Z company takes loss, moves money out of Bitcoin into other investments. And it won't even feature the fact that, it was a tax strategy. That doesn't mean they lost faith in the future of Bitcoin, but they had a medium-term tax strategy, and that still benefited them because everything's beat up. You're going to move your money. Forget crypto for a second. You're going to move your money tactically around tax season no matter what. And if everything's beat up, if property is beat up, and if I have a little bit of margin still, I have a little bit of meat on the bone with my Bitcoin dollar cost average, I might move that money into gold, crypto, TradFi, lots of other places until the market really takes a dump where I lower my dollar cost average because I'm actually bullish on crypto. But if I buy Jarrett's narrative, which I do, I do believe in Jarrett's narrative. I guess when I think about these narratives and then I joke about, Jay did call that Ethereum would go to 0, if we all recall correctly.
Yeah, he did.
So he did call the poopy wedge.
Well, Jay, I feel like, Jay has a T-shirt that says it's going to go to 0. and then underneath he has a t-shirt that says it's going to the moon with a rocket ship, and he'll just take these on and off depending upon where the market is, so he's never wrong.
He'll turn the sweater upside down, like, you know.
Exactly.
Speaking of election day, like actually at home in the Caribbean, people do that. Like when it's election time, different parties have different colors. Jared, it's like this in Colombia as well. Different political parties have different colors. So you got the t-shirts, and as you're walking through different villages are aligned with different parties. So you got to wear red in this village, and then you get to the next village, you got to wear yellow, and then you get to one after that, you got to wear green. So you got to have all 3 shirts and just change them as you go.
It's like the Bloods and the Crips. I'm walking through East LA, and I'm like, oh, let's change shirts.
Exactly.
So I don't get mugged.
But hey, I want to ask Allison though, like about this question about people losing their pension. Like, I want to, how does that even work? Are they like investing in putting their pension in crypto, or did their pension invest in FTX?
Well, the question is FTX publicly traded?
Is it? I don't think so.
One of these companies are. Is FTX ownership and IC? No, it's privately held. It's not publicly traded. So it does matter. I'm very curious. But they providing? They were assisting a lot of institutions, if I'm not mistaken, with crypto lendings. And go ahead.
If they go under, I mean, the only way that I can see that the pensions would lose is if the pensions were directly invested in FTX.
Not necessarily.
No?
So the chain could be. Pension funds are managed in a traditional company, and part of that pension was now investing heavily in Bitcoin. For them to facilitate that, they were either doing like one of these bundle tokens or some form of liquidity pools or something like that. So maybe the pension fund was investing in places it should or should not have been, trying to get returns on liquidity pools.
Got you.
And so if FTX suddenly goes down 80%, it's not so much that it's holding the FTT token as much as what's going on with this ecosystem. And I mean, let's just say it was Bitcoin. Let's say they were providing liquidity on FTX through the pension fund for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's down 20% today. And so they've lost that amount of holding. Now, what percent of the pension was being invested in Bitcoin versus TradFi? Who knows? But it appears to be a major chain of events. But Allison, I'm speculating. I could be way off. If you have any more details, this would be interesting to watch for. And this would tell me the decoupling of TradFi to DeFi is a myth now. This is the first report I've heard of a TradFi function, pensions, being tied to a DeFi function, and the correlation now being enmeshed to the point where someone lost their pension fund.
Well, I think that's a little bit different than I think the way we normally think of decoupling. We were thinking of decoupling more as just like the markets are tied together, not that specific coins or products are tied together. So that's a little bit different. But this is the first time I agree with you that I've heard that something in DeFi has affected TradFi. But I think that's also...
And that's agreed. Sure.
Yeah, that's also what we're assuming, that the idea of pension is a TradFi concept, which I guess it is. But I think this idea of like creating passive income through, leveraging a bunch of money is an age-old concept. And I just think DeFi is just maybe doing that a little bit better. But I don't know. I think normally when I think of the decoupling, it's when people ask me, hey, how much does the crypto market and where it's going have to do with the stock market? That's when I think of decoupling, if that makes sense.
So here's what I'm seeing. More losses for Tiger Global from its FTX investment.
What was Tiger Global again? What was that?
Tiger Global, let's take a look here. I don't know, but I'm willing to bet they're probably a major fund that happens to also manage public equities and private investments. Which include equity investments tied to its in FTX. So they might be pension funds. That's close this window. It's computer down. And then if you just like look at some news feeds from the last 24 hours, California pension fund tied to FTX down. California's pension fund.
Oh,
interesting.
What? So California's pension fund, which is tied. That's what I still want to know. How is it tied to FTX? This FTX has been around for like what, 4 years? How would they manage to maneuver into pension funds?
Well, pension funds are just managed like mutual fund.
But they have like been super trying to get risk though.
I'm surprised.
Not necessarily.
No. Okay.
Not necessarily. I mean, let's say, but they're not going to invest like the whole fund. They're going to do some sort of portfolio management. But if you have, let's say, 10% of your fund goes to high risk, and in that high risk, let's just say you gambled and said, well, I'm going with FTX or I'm going with Bitcoin liquidity or something like that. If your fund, if 10% of that fund takes a 20% dump, the fears start to come. This whole thing is fear. There's no, like, it's all make-believe. Like, all of the ups and downs are make-believe, so it's fear-driven. But if you see something in a single 24-hour period, it's not the whole nut, but even 10% of the fund taking a 25% dip is enough for you to go, I lost 8% in one day.
Yeah.
Or give or take.
Yeah, and in TradFi, if you lose 10% in one day, people normally say that that's like the worst thing that happens to your stock. So when you have a pension fund that, Jay, you're saying normally is a really low risk, long-term investment vehicle, when that goes down 10% or even more in one day, it is like a shock because you're like using that money to retire. So you're like, okay, I have 30 years to retire. You know, when I retire at 60, I have till I'm 90, right? If we're playing, but now I only have till I'm 87. And that just happened in one day. Then the fear kicks in. Holy shit. What happens if I lose another 10% now of that 27, right? It actually compounds quicker. So
and then you get people calling in their trades to their brokers who are managing the pension fund and saying, pull my amount, stop my contribution, whatever this shit is. And then they start pulling stuff and it turns into this fear snowball. Sidebar, I don't have Allison's comment in my feed. And so if one of you could actually pull that or drop that in the private chat, I'd like to actually pull these articles up or these tweets up if you could.
Yeah, I'll drop the link right now in the private chat.
Thank you.
It was from FTX and it was back in February. I'm going to drop it to you right now. I can't seem to access the private chat. Hold on. There it is. One of the things I do want to talk about, though, is what we were talking about right before we went live, which is the idea that Jay kind of put out, which I think I actually do subscribe to this, which is that, okay, BlockFi had liquidity issues, so FTX showed up. FTX has also helped out a bunch of other people. Now FTX has liquidity issues, so Binance is showing up. Binance, while I think that they're printing money on some level because of how much actual stuff they have in their books and probably what they can leverage maybe, they also just gave, or they promised to give, probably they didn't give it, but they promised to give or made an agreement to give Mr. Musk $500 million. So, you know, or a partnership up to that amount so that way he can start to do crypto things with Twitter. At some point, there's just not enough money in the world. So Jay had said, well, the next is going to be, he said either Binance, because that's just like, you know, as like the Russian nesting dolls are eating one another, or like the fish are eating.
Dominoes.
The dominoes. Jay was saying that, well, what about Coinbase? And I don't think, and we'll get into what Allison has said, and also Victor has shared an article too. I don't think it's unreasonable. In the last 12 to 15 to 16 months, things have been really, really tough for Coinbase. They've laid off 20% of their workforce. They've also fallen out of the top 10 centralized exchange list, which is a huge deal, especially when you're the size of Coinbase. And I just think they've had a lot more potential short-term L's than W's. And that can really weigh on a company that's also public, right? Coinbase is public. Their share price is also getting crushed since it IPO'd. Came out around 310, 320. I don't know where it is. I can look it up right now, but it went all the way down to 50.
It's at 50 right now. Actually, today it went up like 20% and then dropped 20%.
So it's at 50. When it hits 40, I think I already have a buy, because I think at 40 it's so underrated. And that's what also Kathy Woods has been saying from like a long-term investment hold strategy. But maybe Coinbase is the next one in this domino that kind of has problems. And George is saying same with Robinhood
George
too.
is
I'm assuming
saying
that he's also
Robinhood. There
saying
we go. Like that. I like the Robinhood idea better than the Coinbase.
I think Robinhood will take a shit sooner than Coinbase. I have to look, but here's why I'm going to push back gently against the Coinbase call. And here's why. The top shareholders of Coinbase, the Vanguard Group, BlackRock, enough said. It'll go through the same ups and down cycles, but it will not fold.
It won't fold. Okay.
Not when we're talking BlackRock and Vanguard.
I'm open to that. I'm also open to it not working. And I think this is where Jay's Lehman Brothers documentary series or TED Talk will come into play. But anytime we say, oh, something can't happen, it's like, well, no one saw really Terra Luna happening and then it fell off the face of the earth. No one saw Lehman Brothers. When I say no one, I mean, I'm sure there was like a few people, but it was such a small amount of people that it doesn't really matter. Same way with like the housing crash, all of these things, right? So I think, and Grayscale. What do you mean by that, Jose? Also, guys, Jose is the guy I'm starting a new show with, the Lunch Money Gems in 2023.
What's up, Jose?
So, Jose, what do you mean by Grayscale?
I think Grayscale is holding Coinbase, but he might be calling the Robinhood trend. You guys call Coinbase, Robinhood, and Grayscale. Remember, Grayscale, if I'm not mistaken, Jose, you might correct me on this.
Grayscale is an investment company.
I believe it's I believe it's an investment company, and I don't think they had anything to do with Diem, but these are publicly traded companies, if I'm not mistaken, publicly traded companies that have a lot enmeshed in the crypto sphere. I believe that these investment companies are at risk. I believe that Robinhood, because it's just shown super poor management, is at risk. I was very hopeful for Robinhood in the early days, but they let the Wall Street Bets crowd take over their brand and their management and their decision-making, and I believe they're taking a real dump. I think there will be a consolidation, and my personal call is when the consolidation happens, Coinbase will still be around personally. I believe they support Coinbase. Okay, so I have to look at I don't see them as the top 10 shareholders, but they might be in there. ARK, Kathy Woods, ARK is in there, but she's had kind of a mixed performance lately. I'm a big fan in general of Kathy Woods' outlook, but I don't see Grayscale right off the top, but the top mutual funds, ARK, Vanguard, 5 Vanguard funds. I would be shocked if the controlling elite allow Coinbase to take a dump that hard.
Grayscale is the one that has this synthetic Bitcoin. I think it was one of the first products on the market for people with the GBTC. So they obviously have a lot of exposure when it comes to the crypto market. And they're very sensitive to the ups and downs. But I also think that they're long-term bets. Like you talk about Kathy Woods. Kathy Woods here's the best way to sum up Kathy Woods. She's going to get shit in the short term, but she's going to be a messiah in the long term. She's been accumulating and buying Bitcoin since 2015. Which is a lot earlier than many people who are listening or who are in crypto. I think the number was like 80% of people in crypto now came in 2021. So that's ridiculous, right? So long term, I think that she will be seen as a visionary, but short term, she's always going to be seen as a crazy person. So and that's just how it is when you're thinking about the future. But Grant, you're saying Coinbase is going to be okay. Jay, what are you thinking? You think they're going to be okay?
I like the idea of it being Robinhood instead of Coinbase. If we say, okay, somebody else has to fall, like the next domino has to drop, regardless of what happens, I like the idea of it being Robinhood more than Coinbase. Robinhood makes sense because they've sort of been on the defense for a long time.
Yes.
And if you're playing the game that way, I think you end up getting into trouble eventually.
Thank you. It does feel like they have stopped thinking innovatively and thinking about the future. And if you look, we should have pulled up the financials of these companies. Coinbase is sitting on so much cash, it's not funny. And not only that, but cash flows from Coinbase Ventures and their ties to Coinbase Ventures. I'm not going to say they're too big to fail. You're right. Most of us have lived through 2008. There's nothing that's too big to fail. I agree with that. So I do stand that we could be surprised, but I would be shocked, and maybe I will be shocked, but I would be shocked if Coinbase actually folds. a good amount of old school BTC hold move to privacy coins.
Yeah.
Is this your? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Victor's been talking about this, and I think Victor and I have been sharing messages on this for a while. But the idea of privacy coins being a much bigger thing, especially as we move into the world where, especially if you're in the United States and you've gone through KYC and AML, and anything happens, the government can definitely get to your Bitcoin. They can definitely, especially if it's on an exchange. If it's on a cold storage, it's a completely different conversation to be had. But the idea of people moving into like things like Monero, I think, and one of my mentors has said for a long time, he thinks the long-term play is making sure you have a certain amount of exposure in privacy coins, because long-term, you're not going to want to know. And I saw this tweet today and I thought it was really good. And I wanted to share with you guys. I should have shared it in the chat, but it was like the people who are creating content, who are on Twitter, who are doing anything in crypto between now and 2030, by 2040, if they're still holding their bags that they were accumulating in 2020 to 2026, are going to not want anyone to know what they have.
Yes.
There is a situation where you're going to be like, oh, Grant lives next door. Wasn't he on that show 15 years ago where they were talking about crypto? Oh, you know what? I can't pay my medical bill. Let's go knock on a Grant's door.
He told us that he walks around with his ledger all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So and on episode 26, he said he walked around with his ledger, like around on a chain.
You said
that's so crazy, bro. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how
I lose it on my desk sometimes. I'm like, oh shit.
My God.
Okay, so don't do what Grant's doing if you're new to crypto. Don't walk around like it's a Jesus piece or it's like Flavor Flav's clock. But I was thinking about that earlier, and I was like, yeah, at some point, more than blockchain, not crypto bros, all the things we're doing, Web3 Podcast Network, anything that we're doing tied to crypto, we may have to put into a pseudonymous kind of like wash station and step away from it, because people are like, wow, they own
just
Bitcoin,
because of how much it would have grown. Is that what you're calling?
No, just because of how big the market could get. And then people will be like, well, they've been around since the beginning, therefore they must have a lot of money in it. I'm talking like when Bitcoin hits 500,000, if you're into that idea, and then when it hits 500,000, it's like, it gets crazy. And so Jose chimes in, he says, my ledger lives in my safe. Thank you so much, Jose, for good practices, not like Grant, and a decent device. Exactly. So anyways, what do you guys think about that? Where we may all need to go into like Do Kwon hiding eventually because people like put 2 and 2 together.
100%. Like now, and during the pandemic, especially during the lockdown, all of these celebrities and politicians were getting robbed, right? They were getting Nancy Pelosi's husband, right? He got attacked. I don't think the dude was trying to rob him, but basically it's the same kind of concept, right?
Hold on, wait. I got to shout out Hugh. He says, I am not watching this show.
Why not?
Well, it's a joke. It's kind of like, these droids aren't yours in Star Wars, right? Like he's not watching this show. So in 20 years, somebody ties him back to the show and knocks on his door. Hey, Hugh, are you into Bitcoin?
I've never seen the show.
Yeah, so everybody is robbing celebrities. I think what you're saying is right, Jarrett. Like 10, 20 years from now, the next target are people who own crypto. That's what I think the general
interesting. So a series of kidnappings, blackmail, but it's entirely a fishing expedition. Like I could look at a Kardashian and go, I'm going to try to kidnap somebody. And that makes sense because their wealth is so obvious. I mean, even the BlackRock people, we can start looking up their website, and they've been victims of attack, blackmails, kidnappings, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the same with Warren Buffett, but
that's what I hope I don't get canceled for it. I feel like this is what the whole Jewish community was upset about for Kanye, right? Where he was saying these anti-Semitic things, and they were if people start saying this, then the same stuff that was happening to us almost 100 years ago starts happening again.
So, but The Millionaire Next Door is a phenomenal book. Have you guys read The Millionaire Next Door?
I have not, but
no.
Jay, I think you would love this book. Honestly,
my mentor is basically that. He's the millionaire.
It was a statistical, basically survey of there's what we think of as millionaires, and then there's what the average millionaire in America actually looks like. And it was very paradigm shifting. Like the average millionaire cuts coupons. The average millionaire has one car. The average millionaire does not wear name brands.
Mm-hmm.
It's a phenomenal book of actual analysis. And one of the anecdotes they give is they were interviewing millionaires. So they put together this entire spread of caviar and champagne and wine. And they had this phone call list, and they called a bunch of these millionaires, and they started interviewing the millionaires. And not a single one of the millionaires took anything off the buffet that made them feel very uncomfortable. They were wearing Walmart clothes. And they said the only person that took anything from the table was one guy who took a bottle of water just because he was nervous in this like high-end hotel where they were doing the interviews. And they were shocked that the millionaires were like, I can't even handle this. Then they realized at the end of the day, this stuff's going to go bad. So they walked to next door, and next door was a boiler room selling stocks and Forex and trading. Bunch of young yuppies, non-millionaires. They were in the middle income wealth, making $200 a year, $300 a year. And they all wear Rolexes, they all wear name brands, and they ate the shit out of the caviar, drank the shit out of the champagne. And this started the principle of the rest of the book. So I actually think you won't know who is actually a crypto millionaire.
No. It's going to be nearly impossible unless you were live on November 8th, 2022, and the internet ties you to something called Not Crypto Bros. That's my point. That's my only point. Yes,
you're
I
right.
agree with Victor says. Only in public wallets can anyone see how much money or NFTs you have.
Yeah.
He's totally right. And this is what Jose Pichardo, Eve said too. He's like,
this
yo,
is Marshalls and TJ Maxx.
Yeah, exactly. This right here, this is Marshalls. For all you Mexicans, this should
go. I know a friend called the Choke Dealer. He's an MMA fighter, and he's like this real
dealer.
Yeah. He's this
that
real.
Is a song, like, man. What is that?
Like choking someone out on MMA.
Yeah,
he's this big dude, but he's so friendly. And in his Instagram profile, he says he's a Selenophile, and he would love that shirt right there.
It says on the bottom, bitty bitty bum bum. But anyways, no, this is a Marshall's get, and I think that a lot of people, especially in Middle America and the suburbans, have, if they were to go through their assets, versus their debt, they probably have somewhere around $1 million if they were to like liquidate everything. But I just think in the future it's going to be really, really more difficult to tell who is a crypto millionaire and who's not. By the way, fun word for everyone listening, crypto millionaire, and you can look this up on Urban Dictionary, fun word, is a cillionaire. So it's millionaire with a C. There's a vocab word for today. But I think for people like us who have been very open, and I put out a weekly podcast, put out my podcast today that was literally called, one of the broier things I've ever done, actually. It was called Don't Sleep on Cryptocurrency. And so I worry that in the future, I'm definitely going to have like multi-sig wallets. So not just one person can like get into it. It's going to be probably just stored super safe. I'm going to have paper wallets like up with Jay on the International Space Station, have like clues around the world about where my Bitcoin is. Because I think, honestly, by 2040, if Bitcoin does what people think it's going to do, what maxis think it's going to do, one Bitcoin's going to be worth about $10 million by 2040. And I know, once again, that sounds ridiculous, but if this is where the world starts to run to, when fiat currencies start to fail as a store of value, anything is possible. And so maybe we should start using aliases or pseudonyms, and maybe before Not Crypto Bros goes to the moon.
What'd you say?
We're gonna go back to. I feel like the entire NFT community was moving, or crypto community was moving towards full doxing. Are we gonna go back to pseudonyms and?
Well, maybe we just have like, my name is just not Jarrett. It's like a joke. Not Jay.
That's a great point, Jay. Full doxing for people that were entrusting with our money, but or with our crypto investments, but. This is interesting because as we get into a metaverse world, there seems to be a desire for alter egos within a metaverse space because, for example, like right now, I think I mentioned to you gentlemen, I posted this fitness post last week or the week before, and it got more engagement than all of my other stuff combined. We talked about that. So I am, to a degree, making a personality change in the open. I'm going hardcore to fitness. I'm ramping my business up. I'm going to quit treating my business like a ministry and start treating it like a business, hiring and firing, getting very assertive. So the people I know are kind of like getting uncomfortable with how I'm acting about them. I'm calling things out directly. Like, I don't agree with that. And I'm letting that put a lot of my friendships on the chopping block, my local Web 2 friendships. And it's creating a lot of friction. The luxury that the metaverse provides, and by proxy, a lot of Web3 technologies, it's provided me the ability to just reinvent myself in that space. I might look the same. My handle might even still be Grant Sparks, but to a degree, it's an alter ego. And so I think that getting into virtual reality or metaverse space, there is a propensity for alter egos, because whether you want to make money and you don't want the baggage of they could Google me and they might find me anyway, but I just don't want to make it easy. And so we have these alter egos, but I think where we're living, the era we're living in, is the transition. Meaning the next generation's going to come up and they're going to hit puberty and their parents are going to hand them a cell phone, and then they're going to log into the metaverse for the first time, and they're going to create an alter ego in that metaverse. And those will start creating parallel lives like at a young age. But we're in the middle of that transition. So I don't think we'll have that. So I think the risk will be mitigated over time. And I think as crypto gets kind of assimilated into other fields, there won't be people with as many bags who have been on the Not Crypto Bro show in the future, I guess is what I'm saying. You know?
Yeah, but that's exactly the point. Anyone who's accumulating right now, anyone who's going to spend and have a very like definitive strategy between now and January of I don't even know. Between now and the summer of 2024 would be my guess. Yeah. Even if you're just putting in, I'm just going to use a very low number here, $100, but this is a lot for a lot of people though. $100 a month into Bitcoin, for example. Yeah. By the time 2040 rolls around and you don't sell that, you're going to be, once again, this is all under the working assumption that Bitcoin does what the maxis believe it to be, you're going to have an unreal amount of money. And I don't think that there's going to be I still think crypto is super early. And I know I say that a lot. And if you're just hanging around crypto, you don't feel like that. But
Tristan, that's his next shirt.
Yeah, literally, we're so early. But anyway, I want to call out Victor's comics. I think it's really salient. It's a good one for anyone to hear, for vets and newbies alike. He says, learn how to use Etherscan and Blockchain Explorer. These are super important if you're in the space. They are. If you are very, very, what's the word I want to, if you have a lot of skills with these things, you're going to be able to just figure out a lot of stuff moving forward. It's something it's one of my weaknesses I actually want to get better at, is being better on Etherscan and the Polyscan, I think it's called, because you can just do so much. Snowtrace,
and nice. Snowtrace is Avalanche.
I feel like all of those applications will eventually be illegal.
Why?
What's
the point of the blockchain, Jay?
I mean, if we fuck, I mean, the point of the blockchain was to hide your money from the government. I mean, that didn't work.
Dude, Jay's got some real Doquan vibes today, and I like it. I also never met Jay in person. I don't know his last name. May never.
Yeah, we don't know Jay.
We don't know Jay.
If you follow what Victor is saying, right, like in terms of privacy coins becoming more important, you recognize that it's either one of two things are going to happen. It's either that you're going to be able to hide your money and your wealth and how much you have from everybody, including the government, or the governments are going to get smart enough to realize that two things have got to go. Privacy coins have got to go, and all of those apps that allow you to check other people's transactions, those have got to go. And then,
interesting.
And then at that point, the only people who are able to check those transactions are going to be the governments. And I think generally that's where CBDCs come in. But if the CBDCs don't work, then the U.S. government is just going to take over Ethereum like they've been threatening to do already.
Wait, threatening to do? Okay, wait. That's the first I've ever heard of that.
Jay,
what are you talking
about? Maybe you
don't have enough time to unpack.
But definitely, like a couple of weeks ago, right? You guys remember they said that the majority of Ethereum nodes are in the U.S., so technically they have jurisdiction over them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If they can assert regulation over, and maybe they don't do it over Ethereum, maybe they do it over node management, node taxation, node regulation, regardless of chain. And by default, they're basically suddenly cornering the Ethereum node market for regulation. Yeah, okay, I could
I'm
see
going to
that.
be super impressed when all that happens. The average politician in Washington can't open up TikTok and make a video under 2 hours without 3 interns. So I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. And if you want my case study on this, I'm just talking about from like a passing actual laws and stuff through the process we have with the three branches of government. Because when Mark Zuckerberg went in front of Congress and they were asking him about how Facebook worked and how all this stuff worked, you've never felt like, how did these people get to where they are? Probably more in your life. They had no idea. They have no idea even how like the most basic ideas of Web 2 work. I'm talking like basic ideas. I'm talking like 2011 ideas.
What about the people on the ground, though? What like the boots on the ground? Because remember, Barack Obama created the Department of Technology, right? With the whole what was his healthcare thing called when it failed, and he had to create a Department of Technology. So there's an entire government department that understands all this work, and then you have to figure that. Come on, the IRS have got to have figured this out by now, right?
Yeah, but okay. I wait, hold on. I think that there's a huge leap between what a U.S. government agency can understand and what would be put in what will actually happen. Right?
I don't know. I don't know.
In terms of like who writes the law when the politicians don't write the laws anyway. Coinbase is going to write that law.
Well, and this is true. So what they do is they put together a commission, and then they get advisors to that commission. They themselves, you're right, the Senate and the House, they don't know shit from shit. An example, I know a person who reported directly to George W. and on things occurring in the Middle East. And I asked them, I said,
that couldn't have been more vague. Thank you.
You're welcome. So if for anyone's curious, we're going back to 2001 and like what was going on then. And so they said, they said, well, we met. I said, what was George W. like? And they said, well, we met in the bowling alley. I said, okay. And for those who don't know, there's a bowling alley in the White House. And he said, W, the president is a nice guy, but he really needs pictures. And that means he doesn't get what we're talking about. But here's my point. They were able to wage an unendable war in the war on terrorism with these charts that this person did not understand. And my point is these advisors and boots on the ground, the Silk Road was still not understood. When Silk Road went down, the government still, the lawmakers still did not understand this. But what they did understand was this. There's someone doing digital currencies, doing maybe nefarious things, but it's to the tune of billions. And they understand money. And as soon as someone comes in with a chart and they says, okay, what do we got to do? And they say, well, this is what we're doing with CBDCs. All they have to do is pencil whip and go right up the draft. Because we understand that they're gaining power because they're gaining money. And I think that scares me more than them knowing what's going on. Because whether it's Coinbase or FTX, that scares me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't share the fear that you guys do, the healthy fear that you guys, the real and healthy fear that you guys probably have for the government and some of the regulations. I'm just not there. I think we're so far away from it. And I think by the time that they try to corral this thing, it's going to be like when you live in a house with 1,000 cats and you're trying to get them to all come drink milk. Like they're not going to be able to wrap their head around this. It's just ridiculous. Like there's no way for them to actually shut down Bitcoin. Like maybe they can stop at the United States. The United States is only 5% of people on the planet. Yes, I know it's a massive part of the global economy, but like there's probably $20 trillion right now offshores from the United States anyways, right? Like we'll figure out a way to do this. I just don't, I think that I'm not worried about that at all. And
interesting.
Victor says the IRS tried to crack down on XMR or Monero and was never able to do it. I was with a good buddy of mine, Jeff. He and I run the Boys and Bolos, the Premier League podcast. For about 16 months, we were mining Ethereum in his basement. And we looked at mining Monero because our working assumption was, people in the future are going to want to hide their money from the government, right? As Jay says, Bitcoin kind of has its roots in this, right? 2008 happens. We see that the government's going to bail out the banks. The banks play dirty. They got paid off. People were like hurt, So we had to figure out a way to keep our money outside of the current TradFi system. Enter Bitcoin, enter Satoshi's white paper. Awesome. But I do think in the future, more people there's going to be people that want to be totally anonymous with their wealth, or they just want to keep whatever they're doing off the books. So Monero is going to be good. But when Jeff and I even looked into mining Monero, the money, it didn't make sense. We were going to be spending a lot more money almost the entire time to be getting it. So I think long-term, if Monero, I guess I'm flipping the script a little bit here, but at long-term, I don't know how Monero is going to stay on proof of work unless it actually does get some adoption to be able to like reward the miners as they get Monero. Because otherwise the price is going to be just continue to be driven down.
I was mining Monero for a while too. I was mining back in 2016, I think 2017, and you're right. The hash rate was even back then not that great. I do want to know, Victor, what you meant by this. I'm super curious.
Going off in the comments here.
Yeah, I want to know what you meant. You think he was not using for the same? Could you expand on that a little bit?
I think it was the government comment when we're talking about the government stuff.
Yeah, I know the context, but I'm not really sure what he's saying.
What he's saying,
yeah. So I'd like
while Victor comes back with that, Grant, you mentioned what you were afraid of. I'll tell you what I'm really afraid of. Not even on the government side, because like I work with the government. I work for governments for a long time and work with central banks. So like I'm not as trusting of them, but I wouldn't say it's fear. But what I'm really afraid of are the banks, the investment banks, big banks. So like I was talking about Kanye a couple minutes ago. One of the things that happened to Kanye after the whole fallout of him saying all the crazy stuff that he was saying last couple of weeks is that JP Morgan Chase dropped him as a client. They said they won't support him anymore. Yeah. And Kanye said he had like $140 million with them. You know what I mean? So like that, hey, if a bank is gonna get rid of you with $140 million, like I don't even have $1 million. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna get rid of me too. And so you and when I think about it, it really makes me think about like, hey, maybe Kanye West might end up being the face of crypto, because if he's got nowhere to bank his money, then obviously he's going to take it to crypto, right? Because otherwise, the whole thing about taking the account away from you is like, hey, well, we basically want you to die, and no other bank is going to touch you now, because like the biggest bank in the world, or one of the biggest, says you're no good.
He was seen, Jay, wearing a Satoshi hat. Or
well, I saw that tweet, but it was I feel like that's an old photo. Is that a new photo?
I think it may have been, but like he's very much into the idea of cancel-less things, right? He wants his brand to be cancel-less because he wants to be able to share whatever opinion that he has in that moment. And if you have not seen the 3-part Netflix series called Genius, everyone should go watch it. If you are at all into Kanye West or anything that he's into, it is a very fascinating look at his life, and also touches upon the very real problems or challenges that he faces with mental health. He is bipolar. And so the thing with the JP Morgan Chase, that to me was just like some CSR move, because the reality of it is they're going to bank Kanye in 6 months when this all dies down and something else big happens, right? Like, banks at the end of the day want their money, and that's a lot of money. And I don't know. I've just seen this like happen so many times with Kanye. He gets canceled, then he's not. Then he finds Jesus. Then he gets canceled, then something else happens. Then he starts like the Gospel album. Then he gets canceled, then he's back. And then he has this, everyone's wearing Yeezys, right? Like, so but it's interesting to think about the people in popular culture that could potentially move the narrative forward of non-government, like, hands in government money. And I think Kanye is he's probably at the top of that list.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else we can think of that is actually associated in any way, even just from like a product plug, like a Satoshi hat, even just from that regard? Is there any other celebrity at any level that we have seen?
The only one I would say, and I think he's a celebrity because he's a celebrity, is Snowden. Snowden's very much for Bitcoin. I've heard him talk about just privacy. I mean, he's very much into privacy. And I think somewhere in privacy is not only your privacy, your information, but part of that information is where you choose to spend your money. And so Snowden has talked about it, but I don't know if there's anyone else. Jay, can you think of anyone?
Musk came to mind immediately.
Musk is there too. I mean, he's very much now into free speech and what he's going to do with Twitter. Do you guys know of any people that have left Twitter? I know a couple people recently that have left Twitter because they're like, no, Musk is a part of it. Yeah, or just, that you've heard of. Yeah, personally.
Oh, I've heard of tons. I've heard of tons. I don't know anyone personally from the Twitterverse, but I mean, obviously you hear the rumors, you hear the myths, and then I'm sure that like you didn't see the writing on the wall. Like, oh, Lieberland, this is my dog. Oh my God, I am a citizen of Lieberland.
Oh my gosh.
Are you really?
I have a passport to Lieberland. I even was going to run for office at Lieberland. If you guys don't know this mess.
Oh, I do.
Do you really?
Yeah, this stuff's crazy. Place?
So there's another one called Asgard, which is the first space citizenship. And so go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Lieberland's crazy, and there's actually a Vice article, and if you follow Not Crypto Bros, I will put it up. They did a series. I think I said this to you guys about a couple weeks ago, but they talked about Lieberland and how it's this like part of, and is it near Czechia? Is it near the Czech Republic?
It's in the contested land between Czech and Serbia, I think.
Yeah, and the only money that you can spend there is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it's a very small population as it is now, but their idea is to grow it. But the problem is right now they can't even go to the land because the Czech like border guard is basically like stay out, but it's a contested land. And I do think that things like this will pop up in the future, especially as, it was founded by Bitcoin maxis and Bitcoin billionaires or millionaires. And they said, no, this is going to be our land. And I do think that this is going to continue to happen. I can see people taking private land in like parts of the United States and just saying, these 100 acres are our land and you can only spend Bitcoin. That's it. I
mean, people do, well, not the Bitcoin piece, but people do like purchase land and then turn it into their own country, right? Because that's legal in the US. Like Killer Mike. Do you know the rapper Killer Mike?
Oh yeah.
I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah. So he bought some property in Georgia and then turned it into a small sovereign nation, right?
You can try. So as we just all saw with the Darrell Brooks case, the sovereignty argument, good luck. Like this guy's going to jail for life because he rolled the dice on them trying to prove that he was this citizen, and he tried to make the sovereign citizen argument. I am very intrigued at sovereign nations, Jay. The reason I found Bitcoin is because in 2008, I realized, oh, look at all this technology. We should create a non-location nation, a nation of people in the virtual verse. This is when Second Life was big, and I was in Second Life trying to establish a country. And State of the Spark was that country. And I was looking for a currency. I needed a Department of Treasury. So I was starting my cult basically in the metaverse. And
I met this guy named Satoshi, but I never responded to him.
He never responded to my emails. But I did hear about Bitcoin in 2008, 2009. I didn't get invested until 2011 because I needed a virtual currency where we could transact. And that project obviously derailed. But projects like Lieberland, I'm a citizen there. I'm a citizen of Asgard, which is a whole other project. Just because and there was an early crypto project called Pangea. And you could start your own DAO. And the project flopped. But the concepts were there. And I think that these efforts, whether it's Killer Mike or whether it's the Czech Republic or the Seasteading Institute is my favorite because they actually have actual cities that they're prototyping that can float and move around so that they never have to be on contested land. And they can endure hurricanes. And it's a really interesting project. They're going to need a cryptocurrency. They're going to need alternate currencies. But I like this because to me, it's the species expressing its craving to not be governed by these current governance systems. Mm-hmm. They want some degree of sovereignty, the land being the obvious one that the government will put you in jail over quicker than your taxes, quicker than anything if you make the case. Go ahead, Jarrett.
Yeah, I want to tell this really cool story because, Grant, I think you're going to find this fascinating. Jay, you will too. If you've ever traveled or if you actually have a U.S. passport, you have an amazing privilege and you should travel. You need to leave the United States. That's my best advice for anyone. Yeah. There are millions of people that would love to come to the United States and even just visit or hang out with their friends, and maybe they can't even get a visa. visas are changing really, really quick. So having access to the United States is going to become an even bigger privilege every single decade as we move forward.
Yes.
But years ago, I was at a beach. I was on the beach in Guatemala. I think I finished my Peace Corps service. So I was like 25, drinking a light beer, hanging out at this beach resort. And we start talking with this guy. And I believe he's from Belgium. And we're like, hey, man, there's just a lot of people who are just traveling. It's very transient. You'll run into people. Sometimes people are there for a week from their corporate job in Europe, or sometimes they're traveling the world and they've saved up money and they're going to travel for 16 months. We start talking to this guy. And he says that he got in the United States because he had a visa. He was traveling around and he was saying how weird the United States is. We're like, yeah, we know. And he ended up in a First Nation. And he ended up working with them for like 6 to 9 months. I don't exactly remember the time frame. And in that time, he basically became super, super close with these people. And because they are First Nation, or because, they're tribal, they were able to basically grant him, say that, yeah, you're now part of our tribe, which they never do to an outsider. And he was like, I don't know why they did it. And I think what happened was his visa was running up because he could only be here for 6 months. He was on a B1, B2 visa. And they wanted him to stay because he was helping out. I don't know exactly what he was doing on their farm or whatever, but he was adding tremendous value. He got along with them and he just wanted to stay longer. So they said, you know what, we're going to do something for you. We're going to let you be part of our tribe. And they gave him this thing, which is basically like a passport that said that he's now part of their nation. So when he went out of the country and then came back in, he didn't have to use his visa. He could use this thing, and the Border Patrol couldn't do anything because they never see these things. There's not a lot of Native Americans that like travel abroad compared in percent. Obviously, this is due to the mass amount of people to just U.S. citizen holding, passport citizen holding people. And so he said that if you think about this on like a much larger thing, it breaks all, and there's some law that was passed in like the 19th century, 1820 or something, that said that they'll always be able to, tribal people will always be able to come and go on the land because it is theirs. So if you think about like a long-term extension of this, if they were to monetize this or create this into like an NFT, and I'm not saying they should do this, I think tribal people should do whatever they want, but it breaks the modern understanding of how you get in and out of the United States. And ever since that day, it like changed the way I saw it. And I was like, no, this game is just set up right now because that's the way it is. But it wasn't always like this. And therefore, I don't think it will always be like this. So I can totally foresee a future where crossing borders, coming in and out, thinking about places like Liberland is going to be such a thing. And what's his name? Tate talks about this. He has 7 different passports. And he said it took him about 20 years to amass these. I only have 2, which is a massive privilege. But I'm currently trying to figure out how I get an EU passport. And I think, once we're all zillionaires and we weren't on Not Crypto Bros and we don't have that money on a ledger around our neck, we can go to Portugal and get citizenship just by buying land and hanging out there. So
why would you want citizenship though? I feel like that's one of the things that eventually goes away as well. Like there's no need to be a citizen of a place.
That's currently a very interesting idea, but for anyone, like we talked about last time, who lives in Vanuatu, you're going to need a citizen. You're going to need to be able to feel like you're welcome somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you're, especially for these nations that are going to deal with the climate crisis on the front and they're just going to wither away, they're going to need something. Ideally, we'd all live in a world where anyone can go across any border, but I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. And the way we're set up right now with the UN and the whole system is not really ready for that. But Jay, I mean, how do you think that would work?
I feel like maybe I'm in like just like a slightly different situation where, and like I can't necessarily speak for everybody, but like I know like with my passport and most people in the Caribbean, you can go to just about every country in the world, save like 20 or so, and stay for up to 3 months. No visa, no questions asked. You just show up. And that's because, like you're from such a small place, like even if everybody from St. Kitts and Nevis got up and decided to, like go to England or something, like they stopped, they're still not going to hurt them. It's like 40,000 of us, like they're not even going to notice it. You know what I mean?
So this raises a great question. Like what I think the boons of being a citizen are declining over time. Oftentimes, it was such a thing to have that passport and have that citizenship for ease of movement without hassle, no visas, that sort of thing. But also getting work. Maybe you ended up in a country where you just wanted to stay and work, but also home ownership. Maybe you wanted to buy a home. But I do think those things are changing pretty quickly,
right,
and degrading, but
yeah.
they're not gone yet.
I don't think
yet,
they are.
but I think. Sorry, Jay, go for it.
No, Jay, finish your thought, and then I want to.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, like, especially on the home ownership side, Grant, like, population is getting younger. And I think more people are fine with, one, not owning a home, but then two, also just sort of being free to move to wherever you want to do. Like, you spend 3 months in that state, and then 3 months in this state, and then 3 months in that country. And if you can figure out how to do that and just work remotely, like, it doesn't matter where you're a citizen of, as long as you have enough Bitcoin to buy the plane ticket.
In essence,
I still think
Jarrett, go ahead.
Yeah, I still think it's a very, really privileged conversation to have, to be able to basically be a digital nomad. You first of all need to have a skill that you can market to the world where you can then just work from your laptop. And while I know every guru on the internet is going to say that that's super easy to do, it's not. It takes time. You need a lot of planning. And I think one of the reasons why you become a digital nomad is, you always have the safety of being able to go back someplace. I've been kind of a digital nomad since 2015, living here and there and abroad. And I want to call out, I have a really good buddy, and he's from Bangladesh, and he can't get into anywhere without a visa because it's one of the least wanted passports, least desirable passports on the planet. And as his country basically washes away from the climate crisis, there's not going to be countries that are like around them jumping at having all these people come over. So I think that having citizenship is going to continue to be a huge thing, especially as Grant said, just having access to making the dollar. Yeah. If I were just making the Colombian peso for the last year, I would be down 25% on my overall purchasing power, even if I provided the exact same service. So I think that citizenship is indelibly tied to currency access, and that's going to be really, really big. Or you can just buy Bitcoin, which I will say is not financial advice, more like life advice.
Victor says you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And I think that's also not financial advice. And, you're right about this passport thing. So my shout out today regarding all of this, my shout out today is Do Kwon. Do Kwon here has joined us. Jarrett shared this with us. My shout out is to the guy that needs no passports, because no matter where he's at, he's effed. And for him to pop into this Twitch stream, he's all smiles. Good on him. I'd be shitting a brick, to be honest. So my shout out is to those who have attempted to change the world, but yet find themselves on the run. If I could do a hat tip to Edward Snowden, I would. I'm not yet that bold. Those are my shout outs. Jay, what are your shout outs today?
Shout out to my 30-day podcast team. We're launching everybody's podcast tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to do like a nice little launch event. We got four podcasters launching, 5 podcasters launching for the very first time. So pretty exciting.
That is exciting. That's great. Jarrett.
Yeah, my shout outs are going to be for Victor and Jose, really coming in strong today in the comments. Also, Tristan, if you want to just dial up some teas, I'm sure we can get them on an Etsy or a Spotify.
Buy the shit out of
Shopify. Allison, good to see you too. Also, Hugh, you were never watching this show. Absolutely not. Go ahead and follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter at Not Crypto Bros. We will be back Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. Eastern time. We will see everyone there. And we didn't talk about this today. I think we're supposed to. That event on Saturday may be an audio only event. So just look out for that. Look out for that invitation. We're probably going to experiment with that because why not? They're new on LinkedIn especially, and they're pretty great. So be on the lookout, follow us, and we will see you guys soon.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.